Can Battle Racism program, and I'm happy to be with you here today. And if you're tuning in from Facebook or through Zoom, we're happy that you're here with us to get an inside look at our Sports Can Battle Racism workshop for coaches. We also have an athlete version of this workshop, and today we're sharing a brief inside look to the workshop. So, if you're not currently coaching, I want you to put your coaching hats on and enjoy just an inside look at our workshop. Normally the workshop is 2 hours, and we've hosted over 150 of these across the nation. And we released this back in October of 2020, and we're excited for you to get a brief look and feel for how this workshop is. So I'm going to pass it over to my co-trainer, Sam, to introduce herself, and we'll just jump right in.
That sounds great. Thank you, Marty. Hello, everyone. My name is Sam Salvia. I am a longtime PCA trainer, and I was one of the members of the task force that helped build this workshop. So I'm very excited to be able to give you a little glimpse today into the workshop. We're going to go ahead and get started. So for this little preview taste that we're going to give you, we're going to break the fourth wall a little bit and talk to you, not just how we talk to coaches, but explain a little bit behind the workshop as well and give you a little insight into how we developed it. So this is a workshop. This version is what we deliver for coaches and for leaders. And we start off the workshop by reminding everyone that we are in a development zone. Positive Coaching Alliance believes that all youth sports should be a development zone where we're focused on growth and learning and improving and becoming better athletes and better people. We want this workshop to also be a development zone, which for us means that we expect it to be a brave space where participants are respectful. We are going to be talking about race, which is a challenging topic that many aren't used to talking about in public. So we always start off the workshop establishing some ground rules about expectations and what we're going to be covering for the next couple hours. And the main one, of course, is that we want folks to have a willingness to learn. And classic and core to PCA, mistakes are part of learning. And some of the mistakes sometimes produce the stickiest learning. So we fully expect that there's going to be some mistakes, and we hope that as good teammates in this workshop and out in the community, we'll help hold each other accountable. Marty later is going to be talking about some ideas for how we can do that. And the workshop has three main goals, and it's structured in three parts around these goals. The first is curiosity and honesty. The first part of the workshop, we are inviting participants to become more curious about marginalized perspectives. The workshop is focused primarily on the Black experience, but we are encouraging all participants to think about diversity and inclusivity. And we do that through a combination of some group activities and sharing some stories from athletes. The second goal of the workshop is an education piece to learn about the long history that sports has had as a tool to battle systemic racism. And then the last part of the workshop, which I believe is the most important part of the workshop. We move from this education space to thinking about action and thinking about what commitments we can make as leaders and coaches to bring about a more socially equitable, just society. And we encourage participants to make notes and write down based on what they've learned today, what they think they can do. So now Marty and I are going to share a couple specific slides from the deck to give you just a little taste of what we provide in the workshop. And one of the first parts we talk about in that curiosity piece is defining culture. So for a long time, Positive Coaching Alliance has used this very, to me, like simple and elegant definition of culture. We've called it the way we do things here. And we've recently, particularly as we were developing this Sports Can Battle Racism workshop, spent more time really thinking about the we and whether when we use that word, if everyone feels like they are part of the we. I would love, we try to make our workshops very participatory, and it's definitely a little more challenging in this webinar space, but for those of you that are on, if you want to drop into the chat, if you think about the culture of a sports program that you're affiliated with or your kids are affiliated with, what's one word you would use to describe that culture?
And I'll throw an example out there.
That would be great.
My team culture, we use the word family. That's one word that I'd use to describe our culture.
That is a good one. I'm trying to think of some of the other words that we've heard as we've done this workshop. I think family is a word that comes up a lot.
Work hard.
Trust, yeah. Mm-hmm. Work ethic, yep.
Teamwork. Yep.
teamwork. Yeah. So um, we, at this point in the workshop, we then talk a bit about, we actually look at a specific athlete's personal experience, a time when they did not feel part of the we poll folks about their personal experiences, and we do a fun breakout activity to start to explore this concept further. And then we move into the education piece of the workshop. And like I said before, that's where we start to talk about the history of sports as a tool to battle racism. At that point, we make a pivot from education to really thinking about how to take things into action. And we talk about moral courage. On this slide, you see Jim Thompson, who's the founder of Positive Coaching Alliance, and he offers us this definition of moral courage: standing up for what you believe is right when others, sometimes your friends and teammates, don't. And so at this point in the workshop, we transition by saying, well, we can't all be famous athletes like Jackie Robinson or the WNBA athletes that we heard about that use their tremendous platform to affect some change. But we can, in the communities that we're part of, we can show moral courage and affect some change. And at that point, we move into a scenario and invite coaches to think about how they would handle a specific scenario. And Marty's going to walk us through that right now.
Yes, and our workshops are very interactive, and we often have people share off of mute and utilize the chat box as we do these activities and exercises and scenarios when we send everyone out to the breakout room. So here's an example of a scenario we might use in a coach workshop and send everyone off into breakout rooms to discuss their responses and then come back as a team to learn from each other. And in this scenario, it says, in a coaches meeting before a rivalry game, one of your fellow coaches states that he can't wait to send them back to the hood. What do you do? So we would give them about 5-6 minutes in their breakout rooms to discuss and then come back. And I would love to just chat right now with Sam, just some common responses that we hear from coaches when they come back after discussing this scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the common responses is a little bit of shock, and that they think it couldn't happen in the program they're part of. And one of the things we do is remind them that every scenario we use in these workshops is based on a real world incident. So this is happening. So then we try to encourage coaches to move past that. A lot of coaches will give us a response that they think they need to address it in the moment, that they want to take that coach aside and say, that's not okay. Mm-hmm. What else have you heard, Marty?
Yeah, I've heard coaches say, we ask them open-ended questions, like, what do you mean by that? Kind of see what their intentions were. Were they trying to be funny? Were they not aware of what they said, or were they intentionally trying to harm or cause harm? So a lot of people do say that this is an opportunity to use this as a teachable moment, to do something, to say something. And I think it's important for us as coaches to take advantage of these teachable moments. We call this a double goal coach moment of truth. And for those that aren't familiar with the double goal coach, that's a coach who's first goal is winning and competing. We think that's important, but the second more important goal is developing the character of your athletes and really teaching them the life lessons that we learn through sports. And here's a moment where we can really use a teachable moment in sports.
Yeah, I love that. I love that concept of leading with curiosity. I think we hear from a lot of folks when they first read the scenario, there's sort of that shock element and that even maybe some anger. But when they've had a little time to talk about it in the breakout room, they do come back with this idea of, well, how can I learn more and ask questions and create a teachable moment? Do you want to talk a little bit about how we think about broadly the two categories of responses when you experience an incident like this? Yeah.
Well, often when people see or experience racism, whether it's overt or subtle forms, the most common response is to do nothing, actually, which is called a bystander. But we're challenging coaches to, step up and be upstanders. And there's two options in ways that you can do that, and teach your players to do that as well. You can call someone out when you see or hear something racist or inappropriate. That means you shut them down directly, often in public, without any intent to address or rectify the damage. Second option is calling someone in, letting them know their comment was hurtful, often in private, providing the space for dialogue to learn and grow. So these are the two options here, and they're both valid. Both are useful. You might decide which option to use depending on the context. What was that person's intent? Are they deliberately trying to be disrespectful? Then by all means, call them out. Or did they say something that they just don't understand? Call them in. We also talk about power dynamics. What if you're the assistant coach hearing this from your head coach, or even the athletic director? Or if it's one of your players, maybe they're an underclassman, they hear this from an upperclassman, and they might not feel comfortable calling in a superior. If you have a relationship with someone already, it's easier to call them in and take that time. And also, we want to make it clear that we're not trying to tell someone who's being oppressed how to respond to their oppressor. Do what's most comfortable for you in the moment. But I do believe that our current culture and society is calling people out more, probably 90% of the time, and calling in maybe 10% of the time, where that should be reversed. We have to be willing to show empathy and grace and practice patience, but also be persistent and let people know when their comments or behavior is harmful. So both of these methods will require moral courage, and you might not have the exact words to say in the moment, but you might need to take some time to process it. So we want to share these racism interrupters. We challenge you to say something. These are just quick phrases to have ready until you have the knowledge and understanding to have a deeper discussion. So interrupting racism is a huge, essential part of showing up. So these are just some examples that you can use in the moment. And with each tool that we share, with each section of the workshop, we end with takeaways and tools that you can implement right away. So here's our toolkit that we share, the moral courage toolkit. Being an upstander is very important. As leaders and coaches, I think we often ask our athletes, right, to have moral courage and stand up for what they believe is right, but often find it hard to do the same as a coach and with our peers. So we encourage you to be that upstander and do something when you see something not right. And the second one is practicing gratitude. Moral courage is abundantly present where there's empathy and compassion and gratitude. So we actually share a gratitude worksheet that you can use with your players to make sure gratitude is a part of your core principles. And third is creating that call-in culture on your team. So the calling out method is useful and valid, but it can also be met with a divisive response, and it can also escalate the situation as well. So we recommend creating a call-in culture on your team, which is a calmer process that does take more time and energy and patience. And we understand that impact is greater than intent, and no context is above causing harm. And we also assume the best intentions. And we want to help people bounce back after mistakes. And it's not always easy, but if it means standing up for yourself and others, we know it's worth it. So we really encourage you to create a call-in culture. And with every workshop, we end with commitment statements. Our goal is not only, to talk the talk, but also to walk the walk and put what we learn into practice, put it into action. We have you actually take the time to write down what you're going to commit to today and how you're going to hold yourself accountable. This is a very powerful moment in our workshop, because coaches will come off of mute and share their commitment statements out loud, and they're all actionable. And we follow up with tools to continue to learn and grow beyond this workshop. It's very important that we understand this workshop isn't the end all be all to this entire conversation, right? This is just a stepping stone to continue to learn and continue to grow. And with our workshop, we also provide ongoing tools and resources that you can use and tap into, use with your players, use within your schools and within your organization to continue to do the necessary hard work to really create inclusive cultures, to really champion diversity and see change for all. So we want to just take a moment to thank you all for joining us today. And we hope this brief inside look to our Sports Can Battle Racism workshop for coaches has inspired you to join us in this work and bring this workshop to your school or your youth sports organization, or share this with others. We're going to drop into the chat box just a link for you to learn more information. We're also going to continue to share out this recording to those who weren't able to join us live, but we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today.